VARA's Rulebook version 2.0, effective June 19, 2025, introduced harmonized definitions across all activity rulebooks. This is not merely an incremental revision. It represents fundamental recalibration of the regulatory landscape for VASPs under VARA's preview. Its implications are broad and deep, signaling a pronounced shift in regulatory expectation, tighter controls or margin trading, and a new token distribution framework. Key updates include mandatory fast travel rule compliance, real-time risk proliferating, stricter custody and insurance disclosures, and required trade-led penetration testing under the technology rulebook. VARA has also shifted toward proactive enforcement with audits and inspections for non-compliance. One must therefore consider, how will this newfound definitional clarity impact the cross-border recognition of the VARA license activities, particularly in jurisdictions with less precise virtual asset taxonomies? Does it pave a more accelerated path towards greater interoperability in global crypto regulation, or will subtle national legal nuances still present significant friction? I'm Dr. Eleftheria, and this is By the Rules, a fact-driven podcast that unpacks the regulation, policy debates, and compliance challenges shaping emerging technologies. And as a policy expert in this fascinating space, it's my privilege to guide you through the latest developments. Each episode draws on detailed research based on official sources, consultation papers, and reports published by national regulators, central banks, and international organizations. We do this deep dive so you, our listeners, can stay truly informed and equipped to navigate the complexities of this evolving landscape. Also, any numbers mentioned here are subject to change, so for up-to-date information, please visit the regulator's website. If you enjoy our work, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast to help others stay informed about emerging technologies, compliance, and regulation. You can also find me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, I'm always keen to engage with quick questions, offer insights on anti-money laundering support, or provide expert guidance. For direct inquiries, you can always feel free to email us. The podcast is purely for educational and informational purposes and does not promote investment nor endorse any technology. Its sole purpose is to explain how the rules operate, expose unresolved gaps in the regulatory framework, and direct you to authoritative guidance. For specific legal or compliance obligation, you must always consult the relevant supervisory authority and qualified professional advisors. And now, let us begin. Today, we dive into the UAE, which carries distinctive weight in the global digital finance transformation, being a strategic gateway between East and West, the Middle East's largest fintech hub, hosting a quarter of all regional fintech companies, and an ambitious nation pursuing the world's most comprehensive blockchain integration strategy. While the UAE hosts multiple financial regulators, including the Central Bank, SCA, and ADDM, this episode focuses predominantly on the Dubai VARA, which has exclusive jurisdiction over virtual asset activities within the Emirate of Dubai, excluding the IFC. Why it matters now? Since launching its economic diversification strategy, the UAE has positioned digital assets at the heart of its the UAE 2031 vision, aiming to cut oil dependence, currently 25.4% of the GDP, and grow the digital sector share to 19.4% of national output. In 2025, key milestones advanced this vision, with VARA playing a pivotal role. February saw the release of VARA's comprehensive 2023 virtual assets and related activities regulations, the world's first tailored framework for virtual assets, with detailed rulebooks for 7 licensed activities. By September 2024, VARA and the Securities and Commodities Authority, SCA, launched a unified national framework for VASPs, streamlining regulatory pathways for VASPs across Dubai and the UAE's mainland jurisdictions. VARA's phased rollout aimed to establish the UAE as a global digital asset hub linking Asia, Europe, and the Americas. It serves as the world's first independent virtual asset regulator, covering Dubai, excluding the IFC, and works alongside ADDM and SCA to ensure full regulatory coverage. This three-regulator model reflects the UAE's federal system while positioning VARA to lead on consumer platforms and Web3 innovation. Through aligned frameworks, tax clarity and integration into national development plans, the UAE is enabling sustainable institutional adoption while preserving adaptability as global standards evolve. Before exploring how VARA's framework evolved, it's essential to understand its foundation. VARA defines virtual assets broadly as digital representations of value that can be traded, transferred, or used for payments or investments, including virtual tokens. This broad and technology-agnostic definition intentionally provides VARA with discretion in determining regulatory applicability, focusing on activities rather than specific asset types, and its model is activity-based, focusing on 7 licensed services: advisory, broker-dealer, custody, exchange, lending and borrowing, payments and remittance, and management and investment services. Importantly, the regime does not license specific assets. Instead, it supervises how assets are used within regulated activities, ensuring a dynamic response to emerging technologies. Notably, algorithmic stablecoins, privacy tokens, and anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrencies are banned across all EU jurisdictions, including VARA's. Now, can a single regulator reshape the global narrative on digital assets? Well, VARA's rise suggests the answer is yes. VARA's 2022 launch marked a decisive shift in the UAE's approach to virtual asset regulation. Dubai Law No. 4 of 2022 introduced terms like economic acceleration, global hub positioning, and next-generation innovation, signaling a broad strategic vision. VARA's funding statements framed Dubai as a regional and international hub for virtual assets, committed to responsible safeguards. By 2023, VARA's tone became more innovation-oriented, with a federal regulation promoting economic sustainability and cross-border financial security. The focus moved from defensive risk controls to regulatory certainty and market clarity. In 2024, messaging reached the high point of collaboration and future readiness. The September SCA-VARA joint framework was described as a pivotal milestone, fostering regulatory cohesion and a shared vision for an interoperable ecosystem. By 2025, VARA fully embraced innovation and enablement using terms like gold standard risk assurance and world-class regulatory framework, positioning itself as the world's first independent virtual asset regulator. This evolution in language from cautious oversight to global leadership aligns with the UAE's broader Vision 2071 goals of technological and economic transformation. How did Dubai go from blockchain trials to setting global crypto standards? Well, between 2018 and 2021, the UAE's approach to digital asset emerged through broader technological initiatives. The Emirates Blockchain Strategy 2021, launched in April 2018, achieved its target of converting 50% of government transactions to blockchain by 2021, generating 11 billion dirhams in annual savings. During 2019-2021, federal regulators began laying legal foundations. Federal Decree Law No. 20 of 2019 defined virtual assets and VASP, subjecting them to full anti-money laundering and SFT compliance. In March 2022, Dubai established VARA under Law No. 4 of 2022, the world's first independent virtual asset regulator, with authority over all digital asset activities in Dubai, of course excluding the IFC. At the federal level, Cabinet Resolution No. 111 of 2022 designated the SCA as the primary regulator while allowing local authorities like VARA to license and supervise activities within their jurisdiction. On February 7, 2023, VARA issued its first virtual assets and related activities regulation, comprising 4 compulsory rulebooks and 7 activity-specific rulebooks covering advisory, broker-dealer, custody, exchange, lending and borrowing, payments and remittance, and management and investment services. Enforcement began swiftly. VARA fined digital exchange OPNX 10 million dirham and its co-founders 200k dirham each for operating without proper licenses. In September 2024, VARA and the SCA formalized a unified regulatory framework enabling VARA licensed firms to operate across the UAE while maintaining alignment between federal and emirate-level oversight. In October 2024, the UAE introduced a landmark VAT exemption on cryptocurrency transactions, retroactive to January 1st, 2018, aligning crypto taxation with traditional financial services. By 2025, VARA continued refining its regime, issuing updated market and regulations effective October 2024 that limit virtual asset promotion to licensed entities. It's also deepened international regulatory cooperation through formal agreements with global authorities. Now, what do VARA's compliance, company, market conduct, and technology and information rulebooks reveal about its regulatory philosophy? The VARA Compliance and Risk Management Rulebook forms the operational backbone for every VASP licensed in Dubai. Compliance in Dubai's virtual asset sector is firmly rooted in the robust framework of UAE federal rules and cabinet resolutions. The cornerstone of this framework is Federal Decree Law number 20 of 2019 on combating money laundering and the financing of terrorism, which not only criminalizes illicit financial activities, but also establishes a comprehensive set of national AML and CFT obligations. This foundational law specifically mandates a risk-based approach to compliance, requires the submission of suspicious transaction reports to the UAE Financial Intelligence Unit, and imposes a minimum 8-year recording obligation for all relevant data. This law is operationalized through Cabinet Resolution number 10 of 2019, which provides detailed instructions for implementing anti-money laundering frameworks, including appointing a dedicated anti-money laundering compliance officer, maintaining internal controls, screening clients and beneficial owners, and training staff. In addition, Cabinet Resolution number 74 of 2020 introduces targeted financial sanctions obligations. This requires daily screening of clients and counterparties against both the UAE local terrorist list and the UN sanctioned list. If a match is found, assets must be frozen immediately and reported to the financial intelligence units within 24 hours. There is also Cabinet Resolution number 109 of 2023, which mandates identification and disclosure of the ultimate beneficial owners, and Resolution number 111 of 2022, which introduces specific IML and CFT obligations for VASPs, including the travel rule, wallet screening, and monitoring for high-risk jurisdictions. These domestic obligations are reinforced by international best practices and standards. VARA aligns closely with the FAT 40 recommendations and their updated guidance from 2019 to 2025. These updates clarify that regulations should apply to entities based on function, not form, meaning DeFi platforms or privacy-enhancing services are not exempt. The FAT has also repeatedly stressed the need for travel rule compliance, robust customer due diligence practices, and effective supervision of high-risk activities like P2P transfers, mixers, and privacy coins. Crucially, customer due diligence must be diligently applied before the establishment of any business relationship or the execution of significant transactions. For clients identified as high risk, including but not limited to those utilizing unhosted wallets, engaging in large value cash transactions, if applicable, or transacting in privacy coins, enhanced due diligence procedures are a mandatory requirement. Under VARA's compliance rulebook, every VASP must establish a comprehensive and independent compliance management system, or CMS. At the center of this system is the compliance officer, who must have at least 5 years of compliance experience, be based in UAE, and be approved by VARA as fit and proper. The compliance officer must be a full-time employee and report directly to the board of directors. The responsibilities include implementing compliance policies, monitoring internal controls, training staff, overseeing anti-money laundering frameworks, conducting regular risk assessments, and escalating material breaches of law or regulation. The CMS itself must span all areas of the VASP's business and include clear documentation, unrestricted access to compliance records, and a risk-based internal monitoring program that tests for vulnerabilities across various functions. While the compliance officer may delegate specific tasks, they retain full accountability, and any delegation must comply with VARA's outsourcing standards. The rulebook places equal emphasis on establishing a fit-for-purpose risk management framework. This framework must be tailored to the VASP size, complexity, and business model. Risks to be addressed include financial risks such as market volatility, credit exposure, and liquidity mismatches. Operational risks like system failures or fraud, cybersecurity threats, and conduct-related risks, including poor client onboarding, inadequate governance, or misleading marketing. The framework must be updated regularly and presented to the board on a quarterly basis. A clear distinction is also made between the compliance officer and the laundering officer. While the same person may hold both roles, there must be no conflict of interest, and each function must remain effective in its own right. When it comes to transaction monitoring and anti-money laundering procedures, the rulebook is explicit. VASP must monitor all transactions for suspicious activity using both automated and manual systems. Suspicious transaction report must be filed immediately with the UAE Financial Intelligence Unit. The customer due diligence must be applied before any business relationship begins. For high-risk clients, such as those using unhosted wallets of transactions or transacting in privacy coins, enhanced due diligence is required. In addition, threshold transaction reports must be submitted for all transactions exceeding 55k dirham, and at no point should a client be tipped off about a pending or submitted report. A clear distinction is also made between the compliance officer and, as I said earlier, the anti-money laundering officer. Record-keeping obligations are stringent. VASP must retain all compliance-related documentation for a minimum of 8 years or longer if specifically mandated by other regulations, including the Know Your Customer records, transaction histories, audit logs, and minutes of internal compliance meetings. These records must be well-organized and available upon request by VARA or other regulatory authorities. Financial records must include a general ledger capturing income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, as well as individual client statements and logs of internal investigations. Audit requirements are also clearly defined. VASP must undergo an annual external audit conducted by an independent third-party firm. This audit must cover both financial statements and the effectiveness of the VASP's internal control environment. In parallel, a separate internal audit function must be established, ideally independent of business units, and must conduct at least quarterly reviews. Audit findings must be communicated to senior management and addressed without delay. Any failure to act on audit recommendations could result in regulatory action. All records must be meticulously organized, easily retrievable, and readily available for immediate submission upon request by VARA or other competent regulatory and law enforcement authorities. Financial records must provide a clear and accurate representation of the VASP's financial position and comprising a comprehensive general ledger detailing income, expenses, assets, including virtual assets and liabilities, alongside individual client statements and detailed logs of all internal investigations or inquiries. If a VASP outsources any of its compliance or risk functions, it remains fully responsible for regulatory compliance. Contracts with third-party providers might specify audit rights, access to data, and cooperation with regulatory bodies. Outsourcing arrangements must be reported to VARA, and service providers, especially those located outside the UAE, must adhere to equivalent compliance standards. Reporting obligations are equally extensive. Each month, VASP must submit balance sheets, income statements, a list of all wallet addresses, and details of any transactions involving related parties or group entities. Quarterly submissions include board meeting minutes, updated risk assessments, and certifications of compliance with financial and capital requirements. Once a year, VASP must deliver a comprehensive package that includes audited financial statements, attestation of compliance by senior management, onboarding documentation for a sample of clients, and a chart of the firm's full group's structure, including UBOs and executive biographies. VARA may also request ad hoc information at its discretion, and VASPs are expected to respond without delay. The rulebook also contains mandatory regulatory notification triggers. These include the appointment or resignation of key personnel, such as the compliance officer, money laundering reporting officer, or any senior management position, initiation or material development of any legal or administrative proceedings against the VASP or its executives, material breaches of regulatory obligations, including breaches of financial requirements or IML CFT mandates, or any cybersecurity incidents or data breaches falling under the scope of the Technology and Informational Rulebook. Any other event that could materially impact the VASP's ability to meet its obligations or maintain its license. These events must be reported to VARA immediately. Delays are considered a compliance failure in their own right and can lead to significant penalties. There is also an important framework for sponsored VASPs in VARA's Rulebook. This model allows a fully licensed and VARA-regulated sponsor to extend its regulatory umbrella to smaller, often nascent virtual asset firms, referred to as the sponsored VASPs, enabling them to operate within Dubai's regulated environment, provided VARA grants explicit and prior approval. Under this arrangement, the regulated sponsor assumes significant responsibilities, including conducting rigorous due diligence on the sponsored VASP, appointing a designated responsible officer within the sponsored VASP who serves as the primary point of contact for the sponsor and VARA, maintaining separate and distinct accounts and records for the sponsored VASP, ensuring the sponsored VASP full and continuous compliance with all applicable VARA rulebooks and regulatory requirements. Crucially, the regulated sponsor remains fully and unequivocally accountable for the conduct, compliance, and overall regulatory adherence of the sponsored VASP. While this model is designed to foster innovation, facilitate market entry for emerging virtual asset business, and support scalable growth, it inherently comes with heightened responsibility, rigorous oversight, and substantial liability for the sponsoring entity. Now, at its core, the company rulebook applies to all VARA licensed VASPs operating under the 2023 Virtual Assets and Related Activities Regulation. It requires every VASP to be legally incorporated and have physical presence in the Emirates of Dubai and structured in a way that fits the nature of its license activity. For example, a VASP offering custody or exchange services may be required to operate as a private joint stock company to ensure a higher level of corporate discipline and regulatory scrutiny. VARA has full discretion over what forms are acceptable for each activity type. The rulebook is especially clear about ownership transparency. All VASPs must disclose and maintain accurate, verifiable, and up-to-date records of the ultimate beneficial owners. This includes direct and indirect ownership and control. Any changes in ownership, control, structure, or even governance composition must be reported to VARA either in advance or immediately after, depending on the nature of the change. VARA may reject or revoke a license if it finds the ownership structure is too complex, overly concentrated, or if it poses risks to the integrity of the Dubai ecosystem. One of the most critical features of the company rulebook is its requirement for paid-up capital and reserve asset thresholds, which vary by activity. These financial safeguards are meant to ensure business continuity and protect customer assets and provide a buffer against unforeseen financial shocks, which vary depending on the type of virtual asset activity conducted. These requirements are designed to ensure that VASPs remain financially resilient, can operate without disruption, and can protect client assets even during adverse conditions. For example, VASP providing advisory services must maintain a minimum paid-up capital of 100k dirham, whereas those offering broker-dealer services need to hold either 600k dirham or 25% of their fixed annual overheads, whichever is higher. However, if the broker-dealer is also licensed for custody services or has been approved accordingly during the licensing process, the threshold is slightly lower, the grade of 400k or 15% of fixed annual overheads. Similarly, custody services require at least 600k dirham or 25% of overheads, and exchange service can require as much as 1.5 million or 25% of overheads, depending on whether custody services are integrated. Less operationally complex activities like lending, transfer and settlement or virtual asset management services generally require 500k or 25% of fixed overheads unless custody is involved, in which case reduced thresholds such as 28,000k or 15% may apply. So in simple terms, this means that each VASP must calculate fixed annual overheads and ensure it always maintains the greater of the fixed capital minimum or a percentage of those overheads. This ensures the firm is adequately capitalized for its actual operating scale. Also, the VARA Rulebook mandates that each VASP maintain reserve assets in 1-to-1 ratio against client liabilities. This practically means that for every unit of virtual asset the VASP owns to clients, it must hold an equivalent amount of the same asset as a reserve immediately and at all times. For example, if a VASP holds 1 Bitcoin on behalf of clients, it must also maintain 1 Bitcoin in reserve assets, bringing the total financial safeguard to 2 Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin owed and 1 Bitcoin in reserve. These reserve assets must be held in eligible liquid assets of the same kind and are subject to daily internal reconciliation. Additionally, VASPs must conduct independent third-party audits on a daily basis and submit audit result as part of their quarterly filings to VARA. Any shortfall in either paid-up capitals, net liquid assets, or reserve assets must be reported to VARA immediately with clear details on the deficit, root causes, planned corrective actions, and a timeline. Daily progress updates must be provided until full compliance is restored. Failure to meet this requirement can trigger regulatory enforcement actions. On governance, the rulebook mandates that any person in a designated role, such as the CEO, CFO, compliance officer, or the money laundering officer, must be pre-approved by VARA through a fit and proper assessment. This review looks at their qualifications, financial integrity, and professional background, including any past disciplinary actions or convictions. The board of directors must also be structured to ensure independent oversight, and it must meet regularly to review risk compliance and financial matters. The firm must demonstrate that key decisions are made through formal processes and properly documented. The company rulebook also establishes strict standards for outsourcing. While VASPs are allowed to outsource certain non-core support functions, such as IT, legal, or compliance, the responsibility for regulatory compliance always remains with the licensed entity. Outsourcing agreements must be governed by detailed contracts that include provisions for audit rights, data access, and regulatory cooperation. VARA may prohibit outsourcing where it believes it introduces unacceptable risks or, for example, undermines effective supervision. For VASPs that are part of a group structure, for example, subsidiaries of global crypto firms, VARA requires additional transparency and controls. These firms must ensure that there are clean lines of accountability, functional separation between entities, and robust controls to protect the Dubai entity from risk spillovers. VARA may also impose additional capital or governance requirements depending on the complexity and size of the group. Finally, the company rulebook imposes mandatory notification obligations. This includes changes to ownership, governance, UBO's financial position, or business model. VARA must be notified in advance of any material changes or immediately after, depending on the situation. Failure to notify is treated as a breach, even if the change itself was otherwise lawful. So, in a sense, the company rulebook ensures that every VASP license in Dubai is financially sound, transparently owned, competently managed, and structurally accountable, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the virtual asset ecosystem. Next up is the market conduct rulebook, which sets the standards for how VASPs interact with clients, market their services, handle compliance, and maintain fairness and transparency in all business practices. Under the 2024 VARA market and regulation, only VARA licensed VASPs or their approved agents may market virtual asset or related services in or targeting the UAE. All promotional content, including ads, social media posts, airdrops, events, and educational materials must be clean, fair, and accurate and not misleading. Risk disclaimers are mandatory, warning that virtual asset investments are volatile, unprotected, and may result in total loss. Tactics like guaranteed returns, urgency messaging, or marketing of anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrencies are banned. Referral incentives must be pre-approved by VARA and cannot mislead investors. Platforms and event organizers must enforce compliance, apply geo-blocking, and vet both content and attendees. Influencers are also fully accountable. All marketing records must be kept for 8 years, and non-compliance can lead to fines for up to 10 million per violation, with higher penalties for repeat offences. Before providing any service, VASP must sign a formal written agreement with its client. These agreements must be fair, transparent, and comply with consumer protection laws. Clients must be notified of changes at least 30 days in advance, and VASP must retain records of all agreement versions. The content must identify both parties, describe the services and fees, list communication channels, and disclose any use of third-party providers. It must clearly state who retains ownership of the assets by default. Ownership stays with the client, and include risk warnings for forks, unsupported tokens, and airdrops. It must also confirm that clients' assets are not protected under any government-backed deposit and insurance scheme. For specific services like lending, borrowing, or staking, the agreement must further detail the specific virtual asset involved, application loan to value ratios, the rights of all parties regarding collateral, clear interest payment terms, including variable rates and communication of changes, how and when assets are held and returned, the explicit consent required for the VASP use of client assets, and detailed explanations of all associated risks and potential for loss. On the topic of complaints, VASPs must acknowledge receipt within 7 days and resolve issues within 4 weeks, extendable to 8 weeks if needed. Firms must publish complaint handling procedures and address systemic issues that arise. All complaints and resolutions must be recorded and kept for 8 years. Every client must be classified as a retail, qualified, or institutional investor. Qualified individuals must demonstrate relevant financial knowledge and meet thresholds of either 3.5 million in net assets or an annual income of 700K. Entities must meet the same thresholds and show that directors are financially competent. Institutional investors include regulated financial firms, central banks, VASPs themselves, and governments or multilaterals with adequate understanding of virtual assets. This classification is crucial as it dictates the level of disclosures, suitability assessments, and protection afforded to its client segment. VASPs are also required to make public disclosures of their VARA license number, approved activities, license validity, and the responsible individuals. They must also warn the public about the risk of investing in virtual assets, highlighting issues like market volatility, fraud, irreversibility of transactions, and the absence of legal protection or deposit guarantees. These disclosures must be easily accessible on their official websites and within client agreements. To prevent market abuse, VASPs must keep detailed insider lists of individuals or entities with access to non-public market sensitive information. These lists must record the access region, start date, and acknowledgement of legal duties, and must be retained for 8 years. VASPs also need internal policies requiring pre-approval and biannual disclosure of staff or board positions in other virtual asset projects. Any conflicts of interest must be addressed swiftly. Specific measures to prevent market abuse include systems for monitoring for common manipulated practices such as wash trading, spoofing, layering, and pump and dump schemes, extending to both on-chain and off-chain activities. VARA prohibits VASP from engaging in active property trading except for basic treasury or liquidity purposes. VARA decides whether a trading qualifies as active based on volume, frequency, or profitability. Group entities in Dubai must also comply, and all activity must be reported under the compliance rulebook. Again, firms must retain these records for 8 years. Finally, its VASP must implement internal virtual asset standards to evaluate which token or coins they list or support, considering market data, liquidity, protocol structure, regulatory status, issuer credibility, legal risks, and potential for manipulation. Firms must monitor assets on an ongoing basis and suspend any that no longer meet these standards. Assessments must be documented, kept for 8 years, and shared with VARA when requested. This includes assessing the underlying technology, decentralization levels, governance mechanisms, and any associated smart contract vulnerabilities. Now, under the Technology and Information Rulebook, all VASPs licensed by VARA in Dubai are required to implement a comprehensive technology governance and risk assessment framework tailored to their business model. This framework must align with the Virtual Assets and Related Activities Regulations 2023 and Dubai Law No. 4 of 2022. It supplements other rulebooks, including company, market conduct, and compliance. The framework must address technology-specific risks using defense-in-depth strategies, covering system objectives, controls, governance, capacity planning, and performance. It must be reviewed and tested regularly, and a Chief Information Security Officer must be appointed. Each VASP must submit a cybersecurity policy to VARA, reviewed annually, covering a wide range of areas, including access control, network security, smart contract validation, incident response, system resilience, vendor management, ransomware mitigation, and data governance. This policy must comply with local laws such as Dubai's Digital Services Law No. 9 of 2022, the UAE Personal Data Protection Law, PDPL Federal Decree Law No. 45 of 2021, and the Central Bank's Consumer Protection Regulation, Notice number 444 of 2021. Key and wallet management policies must ensure secure key generation, seed phrase protection, transaction approval, and physical separation of backups. VASPs must maintain access logs, conduct quarterly internal audits, and revoke access immediately when needed. Clients must be advised on private key security. Annual external penetration testing is mandatory, along with smart contract audits and internal system reviews. VARA may require threat-led penetration testing under specific conditions carried out by independent insured professionals. Emphasis is placed on cryptographic controls, including the use of FIPS 140/2 validated hardware security modules for key storage and robust cold storage solutions for the majority of clients' assets. All virtual asset transactions must be traceable and integrated into the IML CFT procedures. Systems must prevent collusion or manipulation. Where algorithms are used in virtual asset services, VASPs must document logic and assumptions, implement an oversight, and regularly assess performance. Business continuity and cybersecurity recovery plans must be tested annually, covering system failures, fallback sites, and escalation procedures. Any significant incident or plan activation must be reported to VARA within 72 hours, including impact and mitigation analysis. The CISO must be competent individual of good standing and separate from the compliance officer role. Staff training must match their exposure to virtual asset specific cyber risks. VASPs must also have procedures in place to protect confidential information and prevent its misuse, including trading based on insider data. Data minimization principle must be applied, ensuring only necessary data is collected and retained. In terms of data protection, VASPs must comply with the PDPL and other relevant cross-border privacy laws, considering the location and transfer of personal data. They must implement a formal privacy compliance program and appoint a qualified data protection officer. If a breach is reported to a regulator or affected data subjects, VARA must be notified within 24 hours. Additionally, VARA must be given access to relevant data where required. Schedule 1 of this rulebook provides best practice guidance grouped into 5 risk categories. First, under the organizational risks, VASPs must implement a security framework spanning wallet and enterprise systems, supported by secure development lifecycles and workforce security and controls. These include endpoint protection, role-based access, background checks, and formal offboarding procedures. Infrastructure must be fully documented with asset inventories, network maps, and centralized configuration management. VASPs must also vet third-party technology providers with due diligence, formal contracts, and preferably multi-vendor strategies. In addition, firms must appoint a senior officer to oversee information security, set and enforce acceptable use policies, segment internal networks, and apply stronger authentication with least privileged access across all systems. They must also continuously monitor critical systems, run regular internal security audits, and maintain business continuity and disaster recovery plans aligned to critical services and tested at least annually. For technical risks, VASP must use HSMs for key generation and storage, ensure secure wallet creation, and implement robust multi-signature controls for high-volume transactions. Smart contracts must be reviewed using static and dynamic code analysis, third-party audits, and penetration testing. Transaction verification must involve automated anomaly detection, real-time alerts, and formal resolution procedures. VASPs must also maintain secure developer workstations, enforce strong multi-factor authentication, and conduct regular security testing before deploying updates. Key compromise plans, just-in-time access provisioning, and tamper-evident logging of wallet operations are all mandatory. Under detection and response, real-time monitoring of internal activity and transaction flows is required, including user behavioral analytics and alert systems. VASPs must be capable of emergency hardening, forensic investigation, root cause analysis, and remediation post-incident. This includes a complete rotation of compromised keys and rebuilding affected systems. On-chain analysis tools must be used for tracing transaction and coordinating with other VASPs if necessary. For customer virtual asset protection, VASPs must implement strong multi-factor authentication, suspicious login detection, and verification of high-risk withdrawals. Controls must include tiered withdrawal limits, cooling off periods, and behavioral analysis. User educational sources required, covering social engineering risks and best security practices. Wallet concentration must be minimized through cold storage, custody by licensed providers, and physical server distribution. Finally, digital operational resilience is to be achieved through annual testing programs. These must cover a wide range of activities, including vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, open source analysis, physical security reviews, gap assessment, performance testing, and scenario-based drills. All weaknesses identified must be classified and remediated with independent validation to ensure full resolution. Testing should focus on systems supporting critical or important functions. Well, now, how has VARA used enforcement to signal its regulatory strength and commitment to compliance? VARA has emerged as one of the world's most active crypto regulators, using high-profile enforcement to reinforce its standards. In May 2023, it issued its largest penalties to date against OPNX, the exchange linked to Three Arrows Capital's founders. OPNX was fined with 10 million for offering exchange and marketing service without a VARA license, while individual co-founders were fined 200K each for violating marketing rules. The case underscored VARA's zero tolerance for unlicensed activity, its willingness to impose personal liability, and its policy of publicly disclosing violations, establishing clear accountability at both corporate and executive level. In July 2023, VARA suspended BitOasis conditional minimum viable product license for failing to meet required conditions within the mandated a 30 to 60-day period. The suspension barred new client onboarding but allowed existing users to continue trading, reflecting VARA's proportional approach. Following remediation, VARA lifted the suspension in April 2024, reinforcing that corrective compliance is both expected and achievable. Now, how has VARA framework positioned Dubai as a hub for both compliance and innovation in the virtual asset space? VARA's regulatory regime has attracted major regional and international players. BOS is a UAE-based exchange with over 6 billion in trading volume since inception, remains licensed under VARA. After a 2023 suspension, the platform successfully restored compliance and resumed operations. RAN-based in Bahrain but operating extensively in the UAE, is directly regulated by VARA and serves 185k users across the Middle East. Matrix Exchange, launched in August 2023, operates under VARA licensing with focus on institutional clients and USD-denominated trading. International platforms such as Binance, Bybit, and Crypto.com also maintain significant UAE operations with appropriate VARA approvals where required. In parallel, VARA is deeply integrated with Dubai's innovation ecosystem, particularly in the DMCC Crypto Center. Now one of the world's largest blockchain business hubs, hosting over 650 blockchain and digital asset firms as of mid-2025. The center offers services including VARA regulatory support, investor networking, and accelerator programs, reinforcing Dubai's dual commitment to compliance and innovation. What future tools and frameworks will shape VARA's next phase of regulatory innovation? Well, looking ahead, VARA is advancing several next-generation regulatory initiatives for 2025. In the second quarter, it will release comprehensive regulations for DeFi protocols. These will require developers to obtain licenses when protocols generate substantial transaction volumes or serve UAE residents, making a global first in DeFi regulation. This landmark framework will cover governance tokens, automated market makers, liquidity pools, yield aggregators, and other DeFi primitives, signaling a global precedent in decentralized systems oversight. In the third quarter, new rules will be introduced for institutional virtual asset services, including enhanced frameworks for qualified investor vehicles, virtual asset funds management, and prime brokerage services. These rules aim to bring professional-grade integrity, transparency, and risk management to institutional digital asset markets. Throughout 2025, VARA is deploying advanced blockchain analytics and real-time surveillance systems, featuring AI-powered transaction monitoring and automated suspicious activity detection. By the fourth quarter, it will implement technical standards for cross-chain bridges and multi-blockchain transaction monitoring. These will mandate service providers to maintain full audit trails across multiple blockchain networks, improving traceability and compliance. Now, how does VARA fit into the UAE's broader strategy for building a global virtual asset market? The UAE government has strategically embedded VARA within wider market building initiatives. VARA benefits from the Emirates Blockchain Strategy 2021, which successfully migrated 50% of government transactions to blockchain, laying foundational infrastructure for private sector virtual asset activity. It operates within Dubai's broader innovation ecosystem, including the DMCC, a crypto center, and the IFC Innovation Hub, offering regulatory support to startups across the blockchain and digital asset space. Internationally, VARA plays an active role in global regulation forums and bilateral cooperation agreements, contributing to the development of virtual asset standards, while keeping its frameworks aligned with international best practices. Now, what strategic actions should follow from VARA's regulatory evolution and market trajectory? Based on the analysis, the following priorities emerge. As for VARA, they should finalize DeFi regulations by the third quarter of 2025, clarifying rules of IMMs, liquidity mining, and governance tokens, strengthen cross-border coordination through real-time enforcement mechanisms under the SCA VARA framework. Now, for industry, they should standardize compliance tools like wallet reconciliation, asset segregation, and blockchain analytics. Prepare for advanced surveillance and cross-chain monitoring, which is expected by the fourth quarter of 2025. Use VARA's guidance and Dubai's innovation ecosystem to scale and expand. And for the consumers, they should confirm VARA licensing before using virtual asset services. Avoid prohibited products such as privacy tokens and algorithm stablecoins. Participate in awareness and education programs to navigate the evolving virtual asset space. Now, can a single regulator redefine global standards for digital asset governance, balancing innovation, compliance, and market leadership from the heart of Dubai? Well, most regulators focus on capital custody or risk. VARA does that, but what really sets apart is its clear emphasis on fair treatment and conduct standards. It's not just about following rules. VARA expects firms to treat clients fairly, transparently, and responsibly, with clear pricing, no hidden fees, proper disclosures, and accessible complaint handling. Under Schedule 1, VASP must show governance maturity, secure systems, conflict of interest policies, and broad-level oversight on how clients are treated. Unlike checkbox regimes, VARA takes an outcome-based approach. Is this fair? Is this reasonable? That's a higher bar. It's also the only regime I've seen with one-to-one reserve requirements. If a client trades 1 Bitcoin, the VASP must hold 1 Bitcoin in full, in real time. No fractional reserves. That builds real trust. In effect, VARA combines traditional financial standards with next-generation oversight, shaping ethical, secure, client-first firms. VARA's risk guidance, the Schedule 1, spans 5 areas: organizational, technological, data, cybersecurity, and outsourcing. Firms must have security policies, conduct background checks, vet vendors, and diversify service providers. What makes VARA's model unique is its maturity framework. It's not just about meeting the baseline. Firms are expected to continually improve and provide it. This forward-looking high-trust model puts Dubai at the forefront of Web3 governance. Trust is not just expected, it's codified. Well, if you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned as we continue to decode the future of digital finance, one regulation at a time. Thank you.